I'm Erin Anderson. I'm the Agriculture and Environmental Field Technician at the MD of Ranchland, and I take care of a lot of the environmental projects that we do here.
I'm Megan Evans. I'm the Executive Director of the Alberta Invasive Species Council. The MD of Ranchland is so special in that it has so much native grassland here, right? Yeah. And native grasslands are considered to be one of the most endangered ecosystems on the planet.
Native species and native prairie provides much more stable banks and much better filtration of sediment and contaminants for a riparian system. You'll notice it if you get a really heavy rain or something like that, the water turns brown, but the native prairie soaks in that water and filters it out. So it's gone through the roots of all these prairie species, and now it's a lot clearer, cleaner. Yes, the prairie needs the water, but the water also needs the prairie. The more biodiverse a system is, the healthier overall that it's going to be.
Biodiversity is considered to be nature's insurance policy. A lot of our native prairie plant species have elaborate root systems. So we've got elaborate roots that store a lot of carbon too. So these grasslands are major carbon sinks. And of course, climate change has impacts on everything. So the more carbon we can store, the better. So again, everything is connected in ways that we kind of understand and ways that we have no idea about.
The signs that it's disturbed, it really depends on where you are and what you're looking at. It may look completely native. You can tell if it doesn't have a moss lichen layer on the soil, because when that's destroyed, you can't replant that.
And our rough fescue grasslands are notoriously difficult to restore, and the native prairie really does kind of hold on to those scars more so than some of our other ecosystems like forests that regenerate. And of course, invasive species like weeds are considered to be one of the biggest threats to biodiversity. So when we get into natural areas or these native grasslands, weeds pose a real threat to those native species that are there.
Here at the MD of Ranchland, we have a native seed harvesting program. So it really was pioneer. They started the native seed program in 2005. We can take that seed and we can sell it to people who are looking into better ways of renaturalizing. For us, it comes into play with reclamation a lot.
And there's a huge demand for native seed and reclamation, but also for products like for producers to put in pollinator habitat and that sort of thing. I think too, these native grasslands are loaded with native forbs, and a lot of them are insect pollinated. If you want to have a healthy functioning ecosystem, having native pollinators is an important part of that. Native bee conservation does rely on conserving and restoring native plant communities.
We educate about the difference between what is a native pollinator, what is an introduced pollinator.
So some of the specialist bee species only feed on a single plant species. So what happens when we lose that native plant species, right? We lose that native bee. As agriculture has evolved, and we've manipulated some crops like canola for seed production to rely entirely on insect pollination. So we've taken a crop that could self-pollinate and made it so that we get hybrid vigor, so we get seeds that are better and bigger and whatnot. They can start off by taking any unproductive areas of their land and trying to turn it back into some type of pollinator habitat. The Alberta Native Bee Council does have a list of pollinator-friendly plants that provide a series of plants that will bloom all season long for pollinators. Some of them have hollow stems, so some of the bees can actually nest in the stems.
What kids or families can do, plant native species in your yard. Use the programs, use the information that's out there. Native Plant Council, the Native Bee Council, Invasive Species Council, they all have information on things you can plant that are good and native and beneficial to that ecosystem.
But it's not just the pollinators. We also have things like birds and spiders that help eat the pest species that are in that field. So by putting back some naturalized areas and natural habitat, we provide habitat for all of those other organisms that will help us instead of having to rely on inputs that producers have to pay for and bring in. So it's about kind of renaturalizing that area as much as we can. I see the encroachment of invasive species taking over our native plant species and our native grasslands. It's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. Once those plants are gone, they're not going to come back. A few things that everyone can do. One is just to be aware that we have these invasive species, become familiar with them, learn how to identify them, especially the invasive plant species, because they are quite prevalent. And that's why, when we're managing invasive species, preventing the spread, doing all these things, it's to protect our native species.
Yeah, you can buy native forb seeds for your flower garden. There are tons of resources and tons of ways to go and buy for renaturalizing agricultural spaces. We do all of this because we care a lot about these ecosystems and we want to protect them and we want to conserve them, or we want to reclaim them. All of this, the whole reason is it's for the land.